and I'm going to read this one on camera. Hi guys, this is Connie, back for some more Connie Reads The Dogs of Winter. Baby bears in the background, trying to grab my book. This one is titled Winter. Where we now lived in the city, long black cars purred up and down the streets with beautiful ladies and fine gentlemen inside. They stepped out of the long black cars wrapped in fur coats and fur hats and fur gloves and paraded inside the finest restaurants. The first time I tried to beg money from the beautiful ladies, the doorman chased me away. "Get away, you filthy little beggar boy," he growled. "Get away, or I'll call the militia. I watched the long black car waiting by the curb, Smoke and Lucky by my side. The beautiful ladies and their gentlemen are so rich they don't even have to open a door for themselves. Surely they can give a shoeless, pathetic boy a ruble. I tucked my feet under my bottom. My stomach pressed into my spine. I could not remember the last time I had eaten. I leaned into the warmth of Lucky and watched the sun on the golden domes and crosses rising in the sky. Surely any minute a firebird would swoop across the towers and woof. Smoke watched the entrance of the restaurant. The beautiful women and fine gentlemen swept through the door, held open by the doorman in his white gloves. A gentleman in a long gray coat handed the doorman a ruble. Smoke whined. I thought about the two puppies and little mother. I leapt to my feet and raced across the wide plaza, the red bricks bruising my feet. I skidded to a stop in front of the man with the long gray coat just as they reached the car. "Halsta, please," I said, panting. "I'm just a small, pathetic boy with no shoes. Could you please spare a ruble?" The doorman rushed over, waving his arms. "Go away, you filthy little beggar. Leave these good people alone." I dodged the white gloves of the doorman. "Halsta," I said, looking from the gentleman in the gray coat to one of the beautiful women. "Leave the boy alone," the woman snapped. She nodded to the gentleman in the gray coat. "For God's sake, Rennie, give the poor creature some money for shoes." "You mustn't, madam," the doorman said. "It will only encourage more begging." "Shut up, you idiot," she said. "Shut up, you idiot," she said. Then, "Rennie, the money." With a sigh, the man named Rennie opened his wallet and pulled out some money. "More," the woman commanded. The man shook his head and handed over a fistful of bills. "Spasibo, sir," I said, using my best manners. I bowed to the beautiful lady. "Spasibo, madam." They slid into the long black car and drove away. I watched them go, my hand full of rubles, my heart filled with joy. The doorman cuffed me on the side of the head. "Hand it over," he said. He held his fine white glove under my nose and the back of my sweater with the other hand. "It's mine!" I cried. I squirmed under his hand. "Let me go!" He shook me harder. A low growl came from behind the doorman, and then another. Smoke and Lucky stepped beside me. They pulled their lips back. Their long teeth gleamed in the winter sun. Smoke crouched as if to spring. "What the hell is this?" the doorman said, his eyes darting like rats from Smoke to Lucky. Lucky growled louder and stepped closer to the doorman. The doorman dropped his hands. I sprinted as fast as I could away from the angry doorman and his white clubs. "Don't you ever come back here again," the doorman called as we ran and ran and ran. Finally, we stopped on the other side of the great city square. My feet and my head and my stomach hurt, but I did not care. I held more money in my hand than I had ever seen in my life. "Look," I said to Smoke and Lucky, "we can eat like kings and queens for the rest of the winter. I can buy shoes." I tossed the rubles up in the air and let them fall about me like snow. I laughed and laughed. Lucky yipped and nipped my sleeve. I chased him around the stone benches and statues. We rolled in the rubles. "I am a small, pathetic boy," I said, laughing. Lucky squirmed on his back in the snow, waving his legs in the air. Smoke let out a low, gruff bark. I sat up and gathered the rubles off the ground. Okay, I said. I soon discovered there were no carts with men who sold potatoes and sausages and sandwiches in the great town square with the red bricks and gold domes. A few stalls lined the low brick wall just outside the train station doors. There I could buy only bread. Other stalls sold cigarettes and magazines and cheap wooden dolls. I went to the bread stall and bought thick black bread. I had to visit the shops for anything else, and they were very expensive. One shop had strings of cooked sausages hanging in the window and jars of pickled eggs and bins of potatoes and cabbages, but I had no way to cook potatoes and cabbages. I counted on my fingers: Little Mother, Smoke, Lucky, Rip, and Grandmother, and me. "How much for 6 sausages?" I asked the man behind the counter. 25 rubles, he said. I counted my money. My heart sank. I don't have enough for 6 sausages. He took my money. He wrapped 5 sausages and 2 pickled eggs in brown paper. All my money was gone. There would be no new shoes today. That afternoon, it was black bread and pickled eggs for me and sausages for the dogs. Lucky and Smoke had left me as soon as the glass house was in sight. I gave 2 sausages to Little Mother and 1 each to Rip and Grandmother. I put the remaining sausage away for Lucky and Smoke. I broke off pieces of black bread and fed it to the dogs. I thought I had all the money in the world today. I sighed. Grandmother licked my fingers in thanks. Then she curled up with a groan. But the food in shops cost so very much. We need more food, and I need shoes. A cold wind blew against the glass house. A gap between the ground and the bottom of the glass house welcomed the cold. Little Mother and Grandmother shivered. She's right here. Soon it will be much colder than this, I said. I remembered my mother stuffing old newspapers and rags around our leaky window in the bedroom. Let's see what I can find, I said to Rip. We found nothing but wet, crumpled newspapers and an old towel in the glass house. The towel I stuffed in the gap, but it was not enough. Let's check that shed. Rip followed me through the brambles and over the crumbling brick wall. The shed brooded in the weak afternoon light. It looked dark and like the kind of place a troll or an evil witch might live. I licked my lips. I don't know if we should go in there, Rip. But Rip was already pushing his way through the sagging door, the stub of his tail wagging. He poked his head back out and looked at me as if to say, "Come on, what are you waiting for?" The shed was filled with all kinds of things, buckets and shovels and empty burlap sacks that had once held rich-smelling dirt. A wheelbarrow leaned against one corner, and inside the wheelbarrow the most wonderful sight, a pair of leather gloves. They were much too big for my small hands, and something had chewed away most of the fingertips on the gloves. But still, they were gloves. If only I would find shoes, I said as Rip poked his nose beneath a wooden crate. His tail wagged with great excitement. Above a long wooden shelf running the length of the shed was a cupboard. "Do you think there could be food in that cupboard?" I asked. Rip dug furiously beneath the wooden crate. "But if I can get up on the shelf, I can reach the cupboard," I said. But I was too small a boy to pull myself up onto the shelf. The cupboard and what might be in the cupboard called to me. I grabbed a bucket and turned it over. I climbed onto the bucket and up onto the shelf. I laughed. "Look at me up here," I called to Rip, waving my hands. Rip barked. I stood on tiptoe and pulled open the cupboard door. I peered inside. "No food," I called down to Rip in disappointment. But then, something even better. Matches. Matches and lighter fluid and a long, sharp knife. A package of cigarettes and a bottle of vodka had crouched in a dusty corner. These I left behind, but the matches, knife, and lighter fluid I tossed down to the wheelbarrow. I reached my hand to the back of the cupboard to see if there was anything I'd missed. I had missed 3 long candles and a dented, rusted cup. I climbed back down with my new treasures and loaded everything into the wheelbarrow with all the burlap sacks I could find. Suddenly, Rip barked and yipped and lunged at something running across the shed floor. I jumped behind the wheelbarrow. Rip crashed this way and that. Finally, he grabbed the something up in his mouth and shook it hard. When he dropped it to the floor, I inched out from behind the wheelbarrow. A rat, a large rat, lay dead on the dirt floor. Rip looked up at me, eyes shining, tail wagging. I smiled. "You are a fine hunter, Rip," I said. So we returned to the glass house, me with my wheelbarrow full of treasure, and Rip with his bloody rap. As I stuffed burlap sacks into every crack I could find, Rip shared his rat with little mother. I shuddered at the sound of snapping bones and the crunch and smack as they ate, but I laughed as the two puppies played tug-of-war with the rat's long, naked tail. Later, Smoke and Lucky returned with more food. Smoke dropped a meaty bone on the dirt floor. Lucky, a raw potato. Little mother and the puppies gnawed the bone, the puppies muttering and growling to themselves. Rip crunched the potato. Grandmother looked on with milky, hopeful eyes. "Grandmother," I said, stroking the top of her silvered head, "you must eat too." I snatched the raw potato away from Rip, who had, after all, shared a rat with little mother. I offered the potato to Grandmother. She took it gently in her mouth, rolled it about, and then dropped it. She pinned her ears back in apology and wagged the tip of her tail. Why had she not eaten the potato? I carefully lifted her lips. I looked and looked for the long white teeth I had seen in Lucky and Smoke's mouths. The teeth of the dog. The teeth of the wolf. But Grandmother had no teeth, or very few, and the few she had were broken or worn to nothing more than nubs. I pulled her to me and hugged her. She rested her head against mine. "Don't worry, Grandmother," I said. "I will take care of you." With my new knife, I cut the one sausage into tiny pieces and cut what was left of the black bread up as well. I mixed it all together in an empty flower pot with a bit of water until it formed a gruel. "My babushka Inya would fix soft food for me too when I was too sick to chew," I said to her. "She would mix honey with mine to make it sweet. If I had honey, I would do that." Rip and Lucky, I set the pot of gruel down for Grandmother. Rip and Lucky pushed her aside. "No," I said. Lucky and Rip looked from me to the pot of food. They inched forward. I stepped between Grandmother and the pot of food and the two hungry dogs. "No," I said in a low growl. I locked eyes with these two dogs who were my friends and who could tear me to pieces. "No," I said again, and took one step toward them. I looked past between Rip and Lucky. It was brief as a shooting star and full of questions. Finally, they lay down and licked their paws as if nothing had happened. Nothing at all. And that's the end of chapter 20. That's a pretty long one, so that goes up today. Be careful with that and enjoy, please and thank you. And we will see you for the next installment. Bye.